Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're gonna wrap up our segment on wisdom in business by talking about wise business dealings, and particularly a focus on dealing with people you're involved with in business, either internally and externally, wisely. We're gonna begin in Psalm 55, verse 20 through 21. He that has put his hand against such as be at peace with them, he has broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. And a covenant, of course, is like a business deal, and it's like if two people made an agreement. Uh, for example, Quick Trip and Casey's used to have an agreement not to. Casey's would be in town 6,000 under. Quick Trip wouldn't go in there and do business with them, and Quick Trip would only go in towns but more than 6,000. And they kept this went on for many years, and they were at peace with one another. But then Casey's built a Quick Trip in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the headquarters of Quick Trip. And really, they made that agreement to begin with. I mean, I don't know. Perhaps other people changed over time, but regardless, they should have kept the agreements they made. But possibly, when they made their agreement to begin with, they always had the intention of, once they felt they got strong enough, had a large enough base, they would move. They'd move into these other towns. And this, and how it happened in case exactly, I don't know. But that sort of thing does happen. I do know. And so often you have people in business who are trying to make a deal, but they have no intention to. They only intend on keeping it until they feel like they're in a place where they can break it, and it's to their advantage to break it. And notice they use those people skills we talked about before. They speak smooth words, and they speak softly and quietly. And portray everything like they're peaceful, but inside they're plotting war the whole time. And part of that strategy is to put people at ease, so they won't be thinking about things too much. And here's something else they do in Proverbs 23. The words of Shlomo Solomon. We read this in verses 1 through 3. When you sit to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what's set before you. Put a knife to your throat if you a man given to appetite. Be not desirous for his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. So if someone often, let's say, a larger business, they'll have someone say, come to their resort because they want to talk a business with them, a business deal with them, or whatever, and perhaps put on a lavish banquet, and maybe or something of that nature, or maybe they'll meet them at a five one of these 5-star restaurants where you have to have reservations of months to go to, or you pay, or there's a case where people pay $10,000 a year or whatever just to be able to be a patron of this restaurant, and and maybe give them Kobe beef or something expensive like that, $100 or $200 a pound, and it's and it's all trying to get them get the other person in a state of mind and to ease them. But it's deceitful. Remember, the word meat in King James just means food, right? English language changed over time. So all this is deceitful. And so what Solomon says is, don't be eating it. Okay. Consider their real motive, why they're inviting you, and trying to give them this show of strength about their company and about their business. And Solomon continues on with this advice in Proverbs 23 in verses 6 through 8. Eat not the bread of him that has an evil eye, neither desire you as dainty meats. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. The morsel which you have eaten shall you vomit up and lose your sweet words. Okay, so he's got all these delicate foods and stuff, and Solomon says, "Don't eat with him. Don't fall for it. It's a trap." Because yes. I mean, breaking bread is kind of eating bread together. Breaking bread together is universally a symbol of people of friendship and fellowship. And but the fact is, the guy this is about knowing the person involved. They have an evil eye. That doesn't mean they have an eye that's diseased or something, but it means they're always looking to do evil. Okay, and so you might, so and if you one thing he might tell you to do is look into them, try to look at their track record and see. But if you're not sure, just you're safer to make the assumption because if their heart is not with you, again, they're trying to put you in a position, build up your trust in them and your confidence in them, so they can betray you. And that's why that thing you ate that you thought was so great, I mean, if it happens quickly, you may literally vomit it up. Then you'll fix sick to your stomach, but maybe figuratively later, and you're going to lose your sweet words. Maybe you were like Haman going on about, oh, the queen invited just me, and bragged about it, but he did not understand it was a trap. And and the bragging was over once they took him out to hang him. Well, the same thing here. If this person if the person's up to no good, you may be talking about, well, a great deal you got, you're going to regret it later. You're going to quit talking about it when you realize you were taken advantage of, not given a great deal. So look for people who are insincere. And again, often they're very polished in well versed in so-called soft skills or people skills, but it's deceitful. They're just trying to give you the impression that they're friendly, they like you and accept, when all they really are is after something you have, and they want to get as quick. They want to get what you have as cheaply as possible, and make you feel good in the process. At least till it's done. And here's another way they operate. In Proverbs 17, verse 23, we read this: "A wicked man takes a gift out of the bosom, pervert the ways of judgment." Yeah, of course, it's going to be talking about bribing a judge. Pervert, so the judge will rule his favor, maybe not in line, not in line with what the law really says, and whatever, the ways of justice. But it's also true in business. He wants to hinder your judgment. We talked before about, a little while back about how people will use alcohol and then try to get people, while they're not sober, to make agreements or whatever, right? Well, that was one way. Well, this is another way. And they're going to give you something. Perhaps they're going to give you something. So again, to get you feeling like you're favored by them, except and or you to really like them, and not look at the contract, the deal, objectively. That's their whole goal here by giving you something. And then there's another. Solomon continues some more advice about that. It's kind of two-sided, and we'll talk about that in a moment. In Proverbs 21, verse 14, "A gift in secret pacifies anger. The reward in the bosom, strong wrath." Now, we'll start with the positive side. On the positive side, this can be talking about giving someone a peace offering. Perhaps you did something and you were wrong, and it made them angry. So you give them something to show them you're sincere, about you're sincerely sorry, and just try to get get your relationship back right with them. And you try to pacify their anger, and not let and keep and get back to peaceful relationships and not have it turn into wrath. Okay, them acting on that anger. That's what wrath usually. That's basically what that wrath means. Okay, so you're doing that. You're doing this as an act of humility, but it can also, on the other side, be an act of deceit. Maybe you're on the other end and you were justified. You realize you maybe start suspecting. They did something and it's not right, and you get angry about it, and they're trying to do the same thing I said, but their intention is entirely different. Their intention is to get you back to a state of mind where you're looking on them favorably. So you will not look at the not look at that thing. You maybe start looking at the deal and you found something that made you angry. To get you to go ahead, perhaps a little modification of the deal, but accept the deal anyways by giving you something now. And it may be something to you may seem like a lot, but compared to the value of the deal, it's probably really nothing. They might, it could be a car or whatever, depending on what's involved. They're giving you a car, but really they're cheating you out of the value of 1,000 cars. Okay. So, but the whole point is to cool your anger over something where you realize something that they had their deal was not right. Now, in Ecclesiastes 7 verses, in Ecclesiastes 7 verse 7, we read this: surely oppression makes a wise man mad, and a gift destroys the heart. That first part here, it's not about makes him mad, or it could be makes him angry. Injustice makes me angry. So why I don't watch the news, because mostly they talk about what's someone doing injustice to someone else in the world. And there's just world's full of injustice. But probably more the idea is more that drives them crazy. Okay, and it's not necessarily terrible in some sense, because a lot of people will never take any action until they get angry about something, until something's just bothering them. They'll do something, like when we talked about the wise operations. That guy who decides to do something about a lack of education in places, or a lack of a lack of water for people, or whatever the case is. And maybe he realizes because there's an injustice preventing people from going to school, like used to be in the United States. There were schools that just wouldn't let people of certain skin colors or ethnicity into their schools. And there was no equal opportunity, and it made someone angry and drove them crazy. And they did something about it. That's all good, but oppression's a wise man, he cannot stand it, and wants to correct it somehow, because he can see where it's going and what it's going to cause. But the gift destroys the heart. In the same way that there's oppression can destroy society, a gift destroys the heart, and that's what these people who are doing these business dealings with you are trying to do. It's like for example, it's like a man's interested in this woman, and decides he really wants to have sex with her and go, whatever. And maybe he gives her these nice gifts and talks well to her and stuff. And she thinks he really likes him, and thinks, maybe he's the one, for her to marry and all this stuff. And then after, takes her away for a weekend or whatever the case may be, and then he just leaves her and breaks her heart because he got what he wanted. Well, those gifts led her to do things she otherwise wouldn't have done, and she ended up brokenhearted. And the same thing can happen to your business. Your that gift that's given is not for your good. It's revert your judgment so you don't look at it, to cool your anger, to get you in a mood, a favorable mood towards them, so you'll take a bad deal that may even destroy your business and feel good about it at the time. You'll feel bad later when you realize what's happened to you. But but eventually it will break your heart. It'll destroy the heart of what you're doing. So for this reason, a lot of companies have deals, have agreements, or not agreements, policies, where people cannot make, from vendors, cannot take any gift other than maybe something like eating out, them paying for lunch at, say, somewhere like Olive Garden, something like that. Someplace it's, a good restaurant, but not necessarily overly expensive, compared to, not like a 5-star restaurant or whatever, right? Where they can't, or maybe give them some sort of a promotional thing like a coffee cup or something like that. But really, the best policy is not to let them give you any gifts at all. You pay for your lunch, I'll pay for mine, because they're giving to get. To them, it's just an investment. And what they hope to get out of it often is you to agree to an unfavorable deal. They'll leave you brokenhearted. So just don't do it. Now, in Proverbs 19, verse 28 through 29, I read the following. A godly witness scorns judgment. In the mouth the wicked devours iniquity. Judges are prepared for scorners, and stripes for the back of fools. Okay, now we're kind of shifting towards internal. Okay, that was more dealing wise with people externally who are being aware that everyone's out looking for your good and kind of how they operate. But now we're going to talk about some internal people who aren't looking out for your company's good either. Okay, and like the people we just talked about, remember I said you need to look at the deal, investigate the people and stuff. Well, the people are operate that way, either internally or externally. They don't want you investigating. And they scorn judgment. And it's not like unlike before I surrendered my life to Jesus. There are people who did me wrong, and I frankly wanted to bury them in the woods. And because of that, I was against the death penalty because, well, I think I should be killed for murdering other people because I scorn judgment. And an ungodly witness is one that's telling lies, right? And last they want, they don't want, they want the whole attitude is don't judge me. Well, they don't want to be judged because, like I was, they are doing evil and they know it. And their mouth devours iniquity. They're always talking, and they're bringing, and it's like they're eating evil. Okay, so the ideal here. And so they're up to no good all the time. And last thing what you do is investigating and bringing some sort of consequences to them for their doing evil. It's true internally and externally. But what Solomon say you got to do? You got to bring some sort of judgment on them. The judgment's got to come to the scorner and stripes for the back of the fool. And the difference is judgments are harder than stripes in this instance. Judgments maybe throw rocks until they're dead, in the context when Solomon's talking. Okay. Well, yeah, so you got to discern when you catch someone like this. Are they first of all? There's 3 Hebrew words often translated fool, but are they just uneducated and inexperienced? If they are, you warn them, you educate them, and if they're wise, that's enough. If they're like whoops and won't do it again. But we're talking about people who knew better. They're wicked. They're always just trying to find something wrong to do, and the fool has to learn the hard way. And you've got to give them some sort of painful consequences for what they did. I mean, being beaten with a whip, flogged, is painful. There's got to be some sort of painful consequences. But the scorner won't even learn the hard way. And it's gonna take more action than just say demoting them or something. You got to deal with them even harder, harsher, because they will not learn the hard way. They're not going to turn from their ways. The fool has to learn the hard way and will. So you can bring, but you got to bring some sort of consequence to both of them. And and particularly internally, externally, most you can do a lot of times is not make a deal with them or something. But externally, internally, it's really a problem. You've got to take some action. And in Proverbs 25, verses 4 through 5, we read the following about this. Take away the dross from the silver, there should before come forth a vessel for the refiner. Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness. Okay, dross, if you don't know what that is, that's impurities in the silver, bits of rock, whatever, just anything that's not silver, basically. It can be another metal. And if you don't get it all, if you don't get it out, your silver will oxidize. It can oxidize and basically corrode like kind of like rust with iron. It will never polish and look nice. It can even just crumble and fall apart. Okay, because it just won't hold together right. Depending on how much impurities you have and what they are. So you've got to get those out. Then the refiner can make a fine vessel out of them. Like a silver cup or whatever. Okay. But if you don't, you're never going to end up with good results. Well, it's the same way. If you let these wicked people continue, particularly in your company, particularly internally, you've got to take them away. So your business established in righteousness. You've got to get rid of this wickedness somehow or another. And again, correct it. Some sort of painful corrective action for the one that has to learn the hard way, and more harsh action for the one that has to for the one that for the scoffer. In fact, take them away. You've got to fire them. Okay, you've got to get them out. And if you're doing business with them, you may have a contract, but don't renew it with them. Perhaps example or whatever, huh? Or we'll talk about. You probably should have some sort of clause to prevent this from happening. We'll talk about that later. Clause in your contract to start with. But you got to recognize that not everyone's honest all the time, and you got to deal wisely with them. And Solomon's advice about this is finished here in Ecclesiastes 8, verse 11. Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the hearts of sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. You've got to take care of this right away. In fact, in the Torah, when the elders or the judges decide someone was worthy of stripes, Torah said, lay him down right then and there, and apply the punishment immediately. And that's what Solomon's saying. So if they're the scorner, you've got to fire them right away. Okay, you've got to fire them right away. And they'll whine and say you're unjust and blah 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 and don't judge me and all that stuff, but you just got to get them out. Now, if there's some hope for them and they're the fool, that's learned the hard way. You still got to take some sort of painful action right away. Depending on what it is they did, demote them, or take some, or take something out of their salary, or something, right? But something that's painful, so they'll learn their lesson. And you've got to do it right away. Once you've investigated and determined for a fact they were up to no good, you've got to take immediate action. Where it's firing them for the scorner, getting them out of your business, cutting them out their deals, no longer doing business with them, or whatever the case may, whatever you can do in that regard. Or again, the fool who has to learn the hard way. The fool will learn, but you got to give them painful consequences before they'll learn. So, and again, you have to distinguish which are they. And the scorner, often it's someone, one way is the scorner is often someone you've already punished several times. They could persist. Okay. So nothing you can do but get rid of them. And I would say the same is true in your life as in your personal life as well. They're destructive people. Some you gotta give them some. You gotta give them some sort of consequences if you can, and some you gotta get out of your life if you can. And what I mean by if you can, I mean Abigail was married to Nahor. I mean, she's got his. I just spaced his name. I started saying Nabal. Yeah, no, Nabal, not Nabal, and Nabal was, they was not good to her or anyone else for that matter. But she was married, so she couldn't just, she couldn't, under God's law, just leave him. It was still death that they parted. Fortunately for her, Nabal died, and she married David. She couldn't get out of that because of that reason. But she sought she sought for his good the whole time. But so there may be a circumstance. But if you can, you need to get that toxic person out of your life. They'll whine that you're being judgmental and blah blah blah. But you are protecting your life. You're protecting your heart so it doesn't get broken. You need to do that. All right. Now we'll go to the next one from Proverbs. Again, we're talking about now. We've shifted to dealing with people, wise with people internally into your company in particular. Oh, there's some external and personal applications as well. In Proverbs 26, verse 1, we read the following: as snow in the summer and rain in the harvest, so honor is not seemly for a fool. All right, if someone's one of these people who talks about the one that's learned the hard way, or the scoffer, even worse yet, you can't honor them with a promotion or a raise, or reward them with a bigger contract later, or whatever the case may be. Because here's why. In the context, Solomon's context here is a farming business, okay, and crops. And if you're raising crops and there's snow in the summer, it totally destroys your crop. And it's very uncommon, but it has happened. In 1814 was the year without a summer. And Thomas Jefferson wrote in his diary on July 4th, the nation's birthday, this pond was frozen over. Okay. Well, what do you think that did to his, to his large agricultural holdings of, tobacco or whatever else? I don't know if he was growing cotton, but whatever else he was growing. Okay. It kind of destroyed his business in 1814. And the rain and the harvest, particularly if you're talking about something like wheat or whatever, you may not lose the whole harvest, but it can certainly just damage it, and you can lose part of it or possibly all of it. Okay. So promoting somebody who you should be putting out of your business, or at least punishing because of their behavior, is just as destructive as rain is in the snow in the summer and rain is in the harvest time to crops. It'd be just as destructive to your business or your personal life, for that matter. And you can also, there's more in this giving honor to someone. It's not, you shouldn't, doesn't isn't just limit to an employee being to an employee. It could also be a business, someone else you're dealing externally with business, perhaps again a vendor, and you're giving them a contract. You're giving them more business. You're rewarding them a new contract for something besides what they're already doing for you, or perhaps making theirs larger, or whatever. Or it can also, just in your personal life, you can put someone up on a pedestal, as people say, and say, well, they're so talented. They're a great actor. They're great. They're so good. They're so good at acting, or singing, or entertaining, or sports, or politics. Politics, or whatever the case may be. And you promote them. I mean, you may promote other people, not, if it's a politician, vote for this guy, whatever. But really, when you look at the criteria the Bible gives us for a fool versus the wise, we talked about the foolish and the wise a while back, they're in the fool category. And they're going to be ultimately destructive. If it's a politician, perhaps for your country, it's going to come down and affect your life as well. Okay. Do not give honor to anyone that's a fool. And again, you know who's a fool and who's wise by the criteria of the Bible that's laid out. And again, I have a lesson that covers some of the basics of that called the wise and the foolish. If I believe that's the correct name. But yes, so you need to distinguish between those two. Now we continue on in Proverbs 30, verse 24 through 28. We're going to read about some sort of particularly workers you want, but people in general you want in your life, but particularly workers, especially when they're your worker, your internal to your company. And here's what we read in verse 24 through 28. There are four things which are little upon the earth, they're exceedingly wise. The ants are people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. The conies are a feeble folk, yet they make their houses in the rocks. The locusts have no king, yet they go forth all of them by bands. The spider takes hold with her hands and is in the king's palace. Okay, notice these are all exceedingly wise, and they're four actual things, but they're also representative of four types of people. And what's this first type do? They look ahead and see what needs to be done, and they prepare. They're preparing for something that's going to be a real problem. If they don't stick up food in the summer, ants will die in the winter. Okay, and every business has a cycle, as I've said before. So when things are going well, you need these preparers to help you prepare. And then there's those people. Those conies are like, look, they put their house. They're about safety, right? They're looking for that safe place. That place that'll weather the storms. And that's really their strength is that predators can't get to them. They hide where predators can't get to them because they built a shelter. And you want someone that's looking out for you to shelter your business as well internally. It'll bring up these problems they see, and say, hey, wait, we need some sort of protection against this and do it. They're not necessarily long term like the first people. It's more short term, more tactical than strategic. Okay. Now the locusts, these are these self-directed people, and they'll see a problem, they'll fix it, and notice they'll make their own teams without anyone telling them. And you've got to be careful with these people. And what I mean by that is that they're self-directed. They no king, and you cannot if you try to manage them, they don't need someone telling them what to do all the time. They're not them people who just won't do nothing until someone tells them. Quite opposite. But if you start trying to tell them what their job is and how to do it, well, you're going first of all you're going to destroy their productivity that you could be gaining from them. But second of all, you can get them in kind of a jaded thing where they're going to start working against you because they're going to resent it. Okay, they don't need direction. They need minimal hands-off, thing. They often need to be told what to do. They see something that needs doing and will do it all by themselves. And they're perhaps the most valuable people you can have in an organization. You need the other people as well, but just do not micromanage these people. Do not manage them as hands-off as possible. And that's another thing here. You've got to recognize when you're dealing with people internally, employees or whatever, and really externally for as well. You got to recognize which type of people someone is, because you got to adjust your management style according to them. Okay. Now the last one's a spider. Notice that spiders always working. Okay, the hard worker. And it's in King's and because of that, they get promoted. They're in King's palaces. And they may need some direction. Okay. But a lot of times, if you'll just tell them what you want done, make sure they have all the information they need to do it, and they'll go do it. They're inclined to working hard. Okay. They're inclined to work to being working hard at work, okay, and being focused on their job. So these are people you want, and a lot of people aren't necessarily that social. The anti kind of are, and locusts kind of are, but only in the scope of getting something done they see needs to, with their job. They're not necessarily going to go around talking to each other, other people a lot the whole time. Which brings us to Ecclesiastes 5:3. For a dream comes through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by the multitude of words. What about that first one? Again, it's two-sided, like we mentioned before about another aspect there earlier. This one here, you can mean if you're over busy. And it's true, if you're over busy, it'll disrupt your sleep. You'll be dreaming about work, etc., because you got too much business going on. And if that occurs, it's time for you to figure out some way to offload some of that responsibility to somebody else, or maybe if you don't have enough people, figure out what you don't want, figure out what's most valuable, and get and sell off or whatever you got to do to lower that. Figure out what you enjoy most, and give the other and sell the other part of your business to someone else, or whatever the case may be. But the main thing here is, as I mentioned when I talked about wise operations last time, often like Andrew Carnegie started off with a goal. He didn't get much education growing up. He wanted people to have an opportunity, and that's why I kept him going. When things got kind of a low point, it had been easier for him just to take care of his family and just to gotten the job, just taking the job for working for somebody else and whatever. But he couldn't accomplish his goal. His dream only could come through a multitude of business. He needed a lot of business and to make a lot of money so he could build these libraries and all these things he wanted to do and make all these reforms to the and have influence over legislators and etc. to make these reforms for the education system, particularly in the American South, etc. Okay. And his dream came from that. And that was a multitude. And that often speaks about people diversifying, as I mentioned, in wise operations. Okay. Okay. So maybe having subsidiaries and whatever. It's just a matter of learning how to manage that, so you don't end up, it's messing up your sleep. You're gonna have to learn to delegate some things to other people. You're gonna have to realize when you delegate, they may make mistakes sometimes. They're gonna have a learning curve just like you did. But in the end, if you'll pick wise people and not promote the foolish, you'll be able to accomplish that dream that you went into business for in the first place. But and to do that, you've got to beware of this: the multitude of words. Those people, every company I've worked in has had some of these people, and the ones that I worked for about a dozen before my current one as a consultant and sometimes an employee. And the ones that about 10 of them were gone. One survived, one thrived. Okay. And one of the problem, and all of them had this problem of sometimes people that were just the talkers. Yeah, they're like, well, I'm not a detailed man or whatever the case. But really, what it came down to is they were good at playing work for other people, couldn't get them to do any work themselves. Okay, they have these goals, and because the man who doesn't have to do the work, nothing's impossible. Okay, and so it's somewhat because of these other things I talked about. Perhaps they also, went out there and they were like the guy's friend, or what, got some sort of favorable position. The guy put them in charge, and disaster in some cases destroyed the business. Okay, and really, what the guy should have done is looked and saw, where's your accomplishments? The proof of works are the proof of faith, and action and accomplishments are the proof of talent. Okay, and you don't want this guy with these multitude of words in charge. You want those other people, and often they're not as sociable. This guy's real sociable. In fact, that's his whole scheme. He's using soft skills to get other people to do work instead of him taking credit for it or whatever. He'll talk about whether his great leadership qualities, etc. But really, he's not there at all, and he cannot. And what's worse is because he's that way and has no real skills, hard skills, we'll call them. He can't pick. He can't promote. He can't possibly promote other people who do. He will also promote other people who are like him if you put him in charge. So no, so if he's just a talker and not a doer, again, best thing for you is if he goes worse for your competitor, okay, or he or she, honestly. Now, there's also another side to this. Also, a problem with a multitude of words is if you talk too much, if you talk particularly about yourself, you're giving the other person information they can use against you. And remember that guy we talked about the gift and stuff? Well, it's a common trick. They'll try to get people to get monologuing about themselves. And what they're really looking for is how can I? They're looking for something that you value that they can give you to pervert your judgment. Maybe get you into a deal with them, an agreement. They'll bring you heartache later. So you don't want someone negotiating with you, negotiating on your behalf of your group, who's talking all the time, particularly likes to talk about themselves. You want that quiet, hard worker that's maybe not so sociable, but who will really scrutinize that deal and make sure it's in your best interest. Okay, now we're going to continue on some more advice about about wise business dealings here from Solomon. And really, it's about these deals we were just talking about. In Proverbs 17:18, a man void of understanding strikes hands and becomes a surety in the presence of his friend. Because the first problem you have is someone who's striking hands, making a deal, who doesn't have understanding. And I've seen it. Remember, 10 of those companies don't even exist anymore. And I've seen it over and over again in companies I've worked for. Because they put the talker in charge who doesn't have any real understanding, who's subject to bribes, gives them, particularly gives them information about what he would like. Oh yeah, they're willing to buy him a car, willing to give him a car or promise him even a position at their company that's better paying with a better title to get your business. Okay. And even they're not like that. Maybe they're just ignorant, but the fact they don't take time to understand the deal, they'll strike hands and make a bad deal. They'll make a bad agreement, and that can be you yourself also. Make sure, as I said, under wise operations, you understand your industry, the marketplace, the people you're dealing with, except before you make any deals. And if you strike this hand and you become a surety, you're assuring them you're going to keep your end of the bargain, and maybe you're even put up some sort of collateral or whatever, or perhaps you're or you just made an oath. Okay, you made a promise in the front of other people. Remember, a surety's like guaranteeing for a loan or something like that, being a co-signer. Okay, in the presence of other people, in the presence of your friend, particularly, now they have you. Okay, so you got to watch out for that because that's their end game in the first place. These external people, they may use your internal people against you to get to that goal. Now, in Proverbs 20, verse 16, Solomon tells us talks some more about this and about how to avoid, how to give yourself some shelter, as type of that one group wants to do, from these bad deals. Okay, in the first place. Here's what he says: take his garment as a surety for a stranger, and the pledge is for a strange woman. Now we talked about this one, and Solomon gives this exact same advice twice, two different places. And last time we talked about, about take collateral and a pledge that'd be like a contract, a clause or an agreement or something, right? You know, if you don't do such, you don't repay the loan. You know, I'm gonna get your house. Well, this is not uncommon to have a penalty clause in a good business deal. And you know, basically, if you don't deliver what you promise by the time you promise whatever, you're going to be fined. You're going to pay it. You know, the contract's going to be null and void. You know, whatever the case may be, and that will often the people who are up to no good that they will self weed themselves at that point. They'll self sort themselves, I should say. They will weed themselves out. They suddenly will be like, oh, well, we tried to make a deal with you, but we can't, you know, whatever, you know, huh? And but even if they do make the deal with you, now you got some assurance they're going to keep it because it's going to cost them, it's going to hurt them not to do what they promised. Again, that gives you shelter, and you want those shelter people, the Coney people, if you will, from earlier. You want to listen to them because they're going to be looking for that to build that shelter into the deal for you to make sure whoever you're in business with does what they do by putting in a penalty phase. You know, penalty provisions if they don't keep their end. Beyond just, I'm going to quit having business with you. You know, I mean, it might be that, or it might be, there may be something else, like you're going to have a, you're going to have to get, we're going to give you less money, whatever the case is, or you're going to give us money even. Depending on what, you know, the situation, but you got to have some sort of, that'll protect you, that'll shelter you from these bad deals, from being taken advantage of. And Solomon at the end finishes up his advice on this in Proverbs 22 and verse 26 through 27 with the following. Be not one that strikes hands, or them that are sureties of debts for debts. If you have nothing to pay, why should they take your bed from under you? Okay, again, don't be making bad deals to start with, striking hands. Okay. He's not saying don't make any deals at all, but he's saying striking hands and making an agreement. If you're a surety for debts of someone else, it's a bad, you know, that's an unwise thing to do. Don't be making unwise deals because you could lose everything. And it's happened to people before, okay? Because maybe there's a penalty clause in there, like I mentioned before, and maybe down there was something they weren't paying, they didn't read it, they didn't have understanding, and they agreed to something they couldn't possibly deliver. And maybe, and perhaps in some people's case, these people were telling you to be wise with your dealings, make sure they're not these type of people. That was their entire intention. Their entire intention was to actually get your business for pennies on the dollar by making something vague or whatever, so they could come at you with 200 lawyers or a team of lawyers or whatever, and sue you for what you got. And the only way you settle it is basically sell them your business for pennies on the dollars, or just take it from you completely for nothing. Okay, so don't be striking deals without due diligence. And remember Solomon's words: don't be hasty. Okay, don't be hasty. And use those people who, again, often don't exhibit necessarily good, strong people skills to your advantage in your company. Have them looking over things, because they'll scrutinize that thing to death, and they will find it. And the shelter people will be like, "Hey, this is a trap," or whatever, right? Or the ant people will be, the ant people will be like, well, this is only good for now, but later, we're gonna have a problem, or something, or there's no provision to prepare us for later. You want those people we talked about, those hard workers, and those self-directed people. You let them know about it, they'll go get a team on their own and look over it. And if you just listen to them, you'll avoid these problems often, okay? Because they're workers, not talkers. And they're the ones with the understanding and the knowledge. And again, because they spend their time on that, not chatting around with other people all the time, they're often the people skills can sometimes be lacking. But you need to overlook that, and overlook the skills they don't have and appreciate the ones they do have and use them to your advantage. Okay, now we're continue on in Proverbs 21, verse 23. We're going to talk about another. We're going to talk about again. Solomon's thing: avoid this, and let's just talk about this about how to avoid these things altogether. Whosoever keeps his mouth, his tongue keeps his souls from trouble. Okay, keep your mouth. Don't make striking hands, making agreements, even verbal ones, too quickly. Ask for a reasonable amount of time, and reasonable business people will give you. They will say, they'll give you a reasonable amount of time to look it over. They will say they'll give you an expiration on a deal is very common these days. This deal expires in 30 days or whatever the case is. And sometimes the 30 days come with trouble if you're disruptive. So often they really want your business. They're willing to negotiate, give you a few more days, and but they may give you an extension or whatever. But they're not the people who are trying to get you to do something want you to agree with your mouth quickly in front of other people, and they want you to talk about yourself so they can find leverage against you, or or perhaps you're in your negotiator. So you just got to keep your mouth shut and not talk any more than necessary. Of course, you got to talk some. You can't negotiate a deal with people not talking, but you got to be thinking about. As my grandma said, think before you speak. You've got to be thinking about: do they need it? Do they need this information for this deal? If not give it to them. Just give them the information they need for the deal and stay focused on the business at hand. And don't be mixing business with pleasure. And and be careful about them. The ones who are up to no good will try to get you monologue, and get information that they can again use against you. Now, in like manner, Solomon says the following. And by the way, this applies to every area of your life also. As the saying goes, people put their foot in their mouth. It means they said something they shouldn't have. They got them in trouble. Okay, just be careful what you say and try not to talk too much. Think before you talk, as my grandma used to say. Now, in Proverbs 25, 8 through 10, he continues on with this about being careful with your words. Again, verses 8 through 10. Go not forth hastily to strive, lest you don't know what to do, lest you don't know what to do in the end thereof, when your neighbors put you to shame. Debate your cause, your neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another, lest he that hears it put you to shame, and your infamy turn not away. Okay, now notice he's not saying you can never strive with people, because sometimes you have to. Sometimes someone's doing wrong or trying to do someone else wrong, and you've got to stand up against them, etc. But don't be hasty, and don't be going forth hastily. And this often it goes back to that understanding, speaking without understanding. Before you go over there to have it out with someone, and we're going to kind of the personal side first, and we'll apply it to business because the same principles apply. Get understanding first. Get all the facts you can. Check yourself carefully. Make sure you didn't misunderstand something, that there was a mistake made on your end. Because if you go over there and your neighbor, it turns out it was it was a misunderstanding, and you didn't do your due diligence, and perhaps you were just totally wrong. Perhaps you even believe someone who lied to you. You're gonna feel your neighbor's gonna put you to shame. Okay. So you don't want to do that. Again, sometimes you have to strive with people. You have to contend with them, but make sure you know what you're talking about first. So don't be going over there super quick. And if you do have to talk to them, again, debate your cause with just the neighbor. You don't even tell your best friend. You don't tell, if you're in business, and it's one CO to another, maybe, you don't even tell you don't even tell your second command what's going on. Okay. Perhaps. Okay. You just don't tell other people. you do, and this following like the advice of Yeshua, when he said, if you got something against your neighbor, talk to him one on one first. And if they won't listen, get two or three witnesses. They still won't listen. Put them before the whole congregation. This is the context, of course, of a congregation, right? People who are believers, fellow brothers, right? And they won't listen to the congregation. The congregation to put them out, right? Well, but we're just focused on that first step. That's what he's saying to do. And you don't want to discover that secret to another. You want to keep this between your neighbor and you want to keep it as low level as possible. Just you and who you have a problem with. And if it turns out you had a misunderstanding or whatever, not you, you're not everyone's going to know. But if you tell someone else, they're going to know, and they may be one of these people who talk too much, and you're going to develop a reputation. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a good one, and then I'm going to flip it. How I could have been a bad one. I used to go to the church, and they had this thing called Celebrate Recovery. And one day, one of these Celebrate Recovery guys comes to me and basically tells me his deepest, darkest secrets, And I don't say nothing to no one, not even my wife. I mean, not any details. I might say, well, he wanted to tell me some things or whatever, but I didn't tell him what, right? A little while, another time, a little later, another service, another guy does this. Pretty soon, I have every month at least 4 people doing this. Sometimes 10. Sometimes 4 or 5 in a single service. And I'm like, what on earth's going on? Well, I looked at their set, it's 12-step program, and one of their steps, I remember it's number 7, but I can't remember, is telling they're a human being. Well, they don't want to tell someone's going to blab their secret, right? So I got a reputation of being able to keep the secret, which I did. I've never told anyone anything. Not my wife, not my best friend, nobody has ever heard me tell these people secrets, okay? So I got this reputation, but what if I hadn't? What if I was a gossip? Well, that would have got around also, right, huh? They'd be like, don't tell Danny, don't tell Danny anything. He'll just blab it, huh? And I would have had that reputation. And once you get a reputation like that, it's just about hard to get rid of it. And worse yet, if you got a reputation of gossip, other gossips come to you wanting to gossip with you, huh? And and let's just say you made a mistake and you're not really a gossip by nature. Now you've got a whole nother problem to deal with. Okay. And then now people see you in the circle of the gossip and assume you're like them, except. And it just, once these type things start, it's just about impossible to kill them. Okay. So you don't want to do that. Well, the same thing in your business. You want to protect your reputation. And if you have, say, a competitor or supplier or someone maybe you're their supplier, right? And you have something you think, where one of you's not doing anything according to the contract or whatever, or maybe there's a little, you want to start off and try to just talk it out with them and not be hostile and try to focus on the problem and come to a peaceful resolution if they will. You don't want to involve other people unless you're forced to, okay? And particularly if you misunderstood, the only one that knows you misunderstood is the guy you were talking with. It's not going to spread to everyone, okay? You're going to protect your company's reputation because your reputation is worth more than silver and gold, as we saw before in another lesson. And in business, that's totally true. Because if you got a bad reputation, nobody will do business with you, and your business dies eventually, okay? You don't want to be that guy out there on social media that's got 1 star out of 5 his business does by 1,000 customers, okay, or whatever. You won't be that guy. That guy's got 1,000 customers and he's got 5 stars or something close to that. Okay, so you got to make sure protect that bit because that will give you more business. So you got to protect your reputation, and it starts with your mouth and not being too hasty to speak. And finally, in 1 Thessalonians 4, 11 through 12, verses 11 through 12, we read this. That you study to be quiet and do your own business and work with your own hands as we have commanded you. That you walk honestly towards them without, that you may have may have lack of nothing. Okay, now that word study, I first will explain. It, does, it in today's day, of course, it means we know the word means study, but in King James day, it meant to do your best. And that's what the Greek word there means, by the way. It means to do your best. So you want to do your best to be quiet, okay? And you want to focus on your own business. What can you say? Quit worrying about what someone else is doing. You need to focus on what you're doing. Huh? So we need to focus on your own business. And he was right, okay? And you need to work, and you need to be work, and you need to be working. Work's got to come first at work. And in the context here, in the context where he's talking here, then without would be unbelievers. But it's true. You want to walk honestly towards them that are outside about your business as well, or your family or whatever. You want to be on. You want to have that honest reputation, and you want to do honestly towards other people, because reputations are earned, not given usually. Okay, and you want to earn that reputation of honesty by being honest, and even if it means taking a loss sometimes or something. If there is a gray area, it's better for you if there's a gray. There's an area that you guys didn't have really quite clarified. It's better you take you come to first of all, you guys clarify it. Come to the agreement on clarity, and even if it means that you have to take a loss, take a loss without admitting guilt because you haven't done anything wrong. Neither one of you did. It's still better for you because the guy knows that you made an honest mistake. You're taking care of it. All right, and they're going to continue doing business, and you're not going to lack anything. It's true about you as an individual. If you do your best to be quiet, be quiet at work, not talking when you should be working, and focused on your part of the business, on your business, not on everyone else's business. And everyone knows you're honest. You're not going to lack anything. A wise employer is going to value you and will not want to lose you. Okay, you'll be the last one laid off, and trust me, I am talking from experience on there. And by the way, sometimes you don't want to be the last one laid off. You're better off being laid off earlier. But nonetheless, I mean, they asked for volunteer layoffs on the people to volunteer for layoffs at one point in one company I worked for. And I thought about it, and I know because when you have a bunch of layoffs in an area back before people had so many remote jobs, the first guys are going to suck up the pool of available jobs externally, right? And there's going to be less and less jobs. And you're better off getting laid off earlier, and also intend to give you more work if you still. So I went and volunteered to be laid off, and my boss literally said to me, "They didn't mean you, Remington." So you want to be that guy. You want to be that. You want to be that guy. You don't necessarily want to stay there. You may want to get another job, but you want to be that guy where they're going, "We didn't mean you." Okay. Now, in Proverbs 39, verse 4 through 6, we read the following. Lord, because we're going to talk about another side of this, because you can be so focused on work that work becomes your life. You don't want that either. And that's not a wise way to deal with your business anyways, because what'll happen is you'll burn out, and you'll end up making, if you overwork, you'll make bad decisions that cost you time and money. And, it can have a snowballing effect to your, just very detrimental to you and your business as well. And that's what we're going to end with, about dealing wise. It's about how you got to have that balance of work and life. That's what we're going to look at last. Because again, your business, you let it become your life, it's very destructive to you and the business, by the way. And in Proverbs 39, verses 4 through 6, we read the following. Lord, make me to know my end and measure my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Behold, you have made my days a handbreadth, and my age is nothing before you. Verily, every man's best estate is altogether vain. Selah. Surely every man walks in vain. Surely they are disquiet in vain. He heaps up riches and knows not who shall gather them. I think I may have said Proverbs. It's Psalm 39, verses 4 through 6, just to be clear. Okay, now it begins with, it wouldn't be nice if we knew our end. Really, if we knew exactly what day we're going to die, because we could plan very well for that. And it'd make it easy to measure our days. but most time people don't. But this is what, and also we just know how frail we are. We know, oh, I'm only gonna live so long because our life is short, is what David's saying here. And even at man's best day, even if he lived to be almost 1,000 years like Methuselah, 969 years, it's still a blink, a handbreadth in the scheme of things. Okay, it's just a blink in eternity, and everything you do in this life, if this life in this life as in of itself is meaningless. It is as Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, or life is a stage. I'm sorry, that's my expression. All the world's a stage. Life is a stage, or life is an idiot's tale. I'm sorry, life is an idiot's tale, signifying nothing. And that is the truth about this life. This life is all there is, because everything you do, you're going to lose it. You have a 100% chance of losing it all your riches, that reputation I talked about you should build, your title, your company, all of it, your entire business, and everything you got from that, you're going to lose it all in the end. It's not you have 100% chance. And what's more is you don't know who that stuff's going to go to. Yeah, you can leave a will, but you can be like Solomon. He said, Solomon said, it's a vain thing for a wise man can gather up wealth, just leave it to a fool who inherits it and loses it all. And his own son was a fool and lost 10 out of the 12 tribes, and most of the kingdom of Solomon to his neighbor, because he was foolish. And who ended up with a lot of Solomon's wealth that created? Not his son. That neighbor he didn't particularly know. Well, he didn't know this particular guy, but it's not who he intended. It could be someone you don't even know at all. Okay, you don't know what's going to happen to your wealth afterwards. You don't even have a guarantee about that. Okay, so this life by itself is short and meaningless, and everything you do in it is meaningless as well. If this life is all there is, so therefore it's very foolish to spend all your time working and let work become your life. You need balance, and that's what work-life balance. That's what Psalms going to talk to us next about in Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1-8. To everything there's a season, every purpose, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. So the key to work-life balance is simply knowing what time it is. Not on the clock, but what is the right action for today for you to do? Because it's not time for you to work all the time 24/7. That's why God gave us the Sabbath. And if you sign on with him and take the full package of circumcised, where you're obligated to keep the whole law, and you were in the land of Israel. So it's a very serious deal. I mean, it's like the penalty for not keeping the Sabbath was death. Okay, and why is so serious about this? Because your neighbors can't rest if you're not resting. They can't just not be doing their business if you're doing your business. Okay. And besides the fact he's God, and it's part of the contract you signed, actually, because the covenant is a contract, a deal, and you agreed to it. But the penalty phase for that was death, okay? Because it's very serious, because he doesn't want everyone to work, because one person's working all the time, he'll force everyone else to. And everyone needs rest. So in this, so it's time for the Sabbath. It's time for rest, and the Bible actually says not to even think your own thoughts on it. Don't even be thinking about work on the Sabbath. It's time to shut that down completely until until the Sabbath's over. And for myself, that when I started observing the Sabbath, that was the hardest thing for me to do. You know, I could quit physically working, but to quit thinking about working was a challenge, and it took a while for me to figure out to find out how to figure out how to do that and how to accomplish that. So, but so there's a time for everything, and in your business, zeroing in on your business down in verse 6. There's a time when your business is going to gain, a time when it's going to take losses. And when that occurs, you've got to know where it's time to keep the business. Maybe it's going down, but maybe again, there's a business cycle, right? And sometimes it's time to keep it anyways and see it through the tough times. And sometimes it's time to sell it. And it might even be time to sell it when it's going up for various reasons. So again, you need to be aware of what your business, and remember, don't let work become your life, and don't let business become your business become your master. Okay, that business should be there to serve you, to help you fulfill whatever dream you had for it to do. And if it's not fulfilling it, it's time to get rid of it, to get it out of your life. Okay, and if it's hindering you from doing what God's called you to do, it's time to get it out of your life. And you need to discern, but what? Because you need work-life balance. And part of that is preparing. And this is what Solomon addresses here in Ecclesiastes 11, verse 7 through 8. Truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing for the eyes to behold the sun. If a man live many years, rejoice in them all, yet remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that comes is vanity. And remember, vanity just means worthless, okay, right? It's worthless, all right. So there's gonna be your life's gonna have, again, time for everything, good seasons and bad seasons in your life, not just your business. And when things are going well, you need to be preparing for the days when they're not. As surely as every morning is followed by an evening, days of darkness are going to come upon you. And they may be many if you live many years. Okay, if you may live many years, you may have many years of darkness. And a lot of that starts with people's health failing them in some manner. And not everyone's equal in that. Some people may live to 80 and really have pretty good health for 79 years, and then just the last year it's all downhill. Or they may be like a lot of men in my family who don't. The ones who did this didn't live to 8, didn't live past 60 or 70, past 60 or so. But they're going along in life and actually things are going pretty well. And we have this condition where, without warning, without any kind of warning at all, because it's not caused by blockage like the usual classic heart attack. The heart goes crazy. The heart goes crazy, and they're dead in 30 seconds with no warning ahead of time. Okay, but that's not normal. Someone's hit by a car. Normal though, most people, for the most part, are not going to be hit by a car, die suddenly from something like I described that happens in my family. Most people are going to have a period of getting ill, and they're going to go downhill in kind of a slow manner through aging and whatever, right? And while you're young and things are well, you got to be preparing for that, like the ant preparing for the sun in the summer, preparing for the winter, because winter's coming. And it may be a long time. And that's, for some people, it's an excessive long time. Some people their health may fail them, like the woman with the issue of blood when they're young. And Yeshua hadn't healed her, she'd have had it the rest of her life. Okay. And she may have lived, if you live a long time, that's especially problematic. Okay. So remember, you can't be focused just on now. How much money can I make today? Except when things are going well, is a time to be like the ant and see ahead and do some preparing. And also, You got not just with your money, you've got to prepare ahead with your time as well. And we're going to discuss that when we wrap up here in our last section. The Ecclesiastes 2 Ecclesiastes 2 verse 24. Read the following. There is nothing better for a man than he should eat and drink, and he should make it so good in his labor. I'm sorry, should make it so enjoy good in his labor. This I saw also that it was from the hand of God. It is the hand of God that you enjoy what you work for, that you eat and drink, and you spend time with other people, because you don't want to be that guy who had no time for his children when they were young, so they have no time for him when he's old. Okay, or that woman. You have to a woman too, I suppose. And you don't want to let work become your life. Well, you don't even have any time to enjoy what you worked for. It's from the hand of God. God gave you life to be enjoyed. And that means you got to quit working during part of it to enjoy. You got to spend some of your time and money on enjoyment, because it is from the hand of God. It's why he gave you life to start with. Your ability to that came from him to begin with. And it's more than that. In Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11 to 13, we read the following. He has made beautiful everything in his time. He has set the world in their hearts, so no man can find out the work that God makes from the beginning to the end. I know there's no good in him, but for a man to rejoice to do good in his life. Also, every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. Okay, he that made everything beautiful in his time is God. Now, where it says the world, that's a little bit of mistranslation, because in Hebrew they look very similar. They went with the word olam, which means the world, but it's really elam, eternity. Okay, he said eternity in their heart. Why? Because no man can find out the work of God from beginning to end. We don't live long enough. Okay, we only live long for eternity. I'm sure we'll be learning. There'll still be something new to us all the time. And there's a time for everything. He made everything beautiful in his time. And we'll talk about some more in the future lessons. But even things that look terrible to us have a purpose. So because there's no good in the days of our life on this world, he set eternity in our hearts. We know there's something more. People have a sense of that. I watched the movie Sabina, Torture for Christ, and in this movie, this man and his wife were atheists and stuff, and the man gets sick, and while he's recovering, he starts thinking and realizes he's how dissatisfied he really is, despite his wealth and everything else, because this life will never satisfy you. It's not enough. You got to give some time for the things of God as well. But more than that, but equally important to that, in fact, in God's Torah, his commandments, when it comes to Sukkot, he commands you, even if you have to take part of your tithe money that's normally for the wages of the minister, to spend it making sure you have a good time during Sukkot, making sure you have the food and drink you need to enjoy Sukkot. It's his commandment that at times you enjoy your life. It's from his hand. He gave you your life to be enjoyed and the things in it. And it's his gift. It's his gift to you. And this is super important to understand, because I mentioned people want to take care of others. Sometimes people are driven by a desire to take care of other people. Like Andrew Carnegie mentioned, or perhaps a guy wants to drill wells that some people in Africa have water, or whatever the case is, right? And Satan will use it against you, trying to make you feel guilty for not spending every moment of your life focused on building your business to take care of that problem. And anything you spend on yourself make you feel guilty for spending it on yourself. It'll be like Judas Iscariot when the woman with the alabaster jar washed Jesus' feet, and 300 days' wages is a lot of money, right? That's what someone says, 300 penny. All right. And you're just like, well, why this waste could have been given to the poor? That's the same thing Satan will try on you. But no, God commands you in some cases to spend part of what you earn on yourself. It's from his hand. He gave you your life and the things in it so you can enjoy them. And it's his gift. Don't reject his gift. He's not like those people we talked about at the beginning trying to give you a gift to pervert your judgment so you'll make a bad decision. He's only good and looking out for your good. So do not feel guilty about it, but do not go into debt doing it either. Because he tells us, we've seen this, not to go into debt. It'll make us a slave. You can enjoy quite a few things for not much money. Some of my best times in life, just simple things. Tossing a frisbee with my brothers wasn't much. Playing cards didn't cost much. Fishing with a cane pole didn't cost much. There's lots of things you can do to enjoy your life, but sometimes you might want to do something that costs more. And like my father had promised me to go to Disney, take us to Disneyland, and my parents got divorced and never did. But later, my son wanted to go, and go to Disney World. And I promised him. Now, I wouldn't advise it now, but at the time I didn't know any better. But I kept my word. And, it cost me $2,000. This is way back when hotels were cheaper. It cost about $2,000. I took my wife, my three children, my brother-in-law, my mother on this fabulous 2-week trip. But the thing is, I saved money for 5 years to go on that trip. And Satan could have tried to guilt trip me on that. And yes, there's a time when you should not take that money and help the poor. And yes, there's a time you should take that money and use it for your business instead. But there's also a time you should enjoy it. And that was my time to enjoy it, to keep my word to my son. And honestly, it's the only real vacation I've ever had long term like that. And it's the best one. It's one of the best memories of my life. And it was the gift of God. Do not let work become your life. You got yourself time and money. You got to budget both of those to enjoy your life as well as take care of other people and spend time with God, but also to take care of yourself and to enjoy your life. It is the commandment of God from his hand, and it's a gift from God. And if you don't, you're going to end up like here in Ecclesiastes 6:3. Solomon gives we're in with this warning from Solomon here. Ecclesiastes 6, I should say, verse 3. If a man begat 100 children, live many years, so the days of his life be many, his soul not be filled with good, and he have no burial, I said, an untimely birth is better than he. Okay, an untimely birth, he's talking about someone that was stillborn, born dead. And what's the problem? He begat 100 children in the context of something. That's about some guy was fornicating with a bunch of women. He's a guy with a bunch of wives. He's rich, okay, and has a bunch of children, okay. And notice he lives many days, but he worked all the time. No relationship with his children. He has 100 children, but he doesn't spend time with any of them. Sure, he's providing what they need physically, but he doesn't spend time with them. And he doesn't enjoy his own life. He's not filled with good. And because he has no time for people, they don't even show up for his funeral. I mean, as far as they're concerned, just dispose of him as cheaply as possible. Even though perhaps he left a lot of money, or perhaps he didn't leave a lot of money. Perhaps he had 100 children, and things went south and he couldn't afford, to take care of them. But regardless, either way, there's no funeral for this guy. He didn't enjoy his life, even though he lived long and was wealthy. It'd been better for him if he had not even been born. If he had died in his mother's womb. Then that's Solomon's warning for us about not having a work-life balance. Do not let work become your life. Enjoy your life. Again, it's the commandment of God. It's from the hand of God. It's the gift of God. And my last thing, I'm going to remind you about one more thing about when it comes to wisdom in business is money. let God be your master and let money be your slave. Again, let God be your master, let money be your slave. That's all I have till next week. Shalom.